Scalia Speaks, Chapter 41, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Justice Scalia and Justice Ginsburg forged their enduring friendship during the 4 years from 1982 to 1986, in which they were colleagues on the D.C. Circuit. In 1990, Justice Scalia took part in a roast of then Judge Ginsburg in celebration of her 10th anniversary on that court. She would join him on the Supreme Court 3 years later. It was a great impression on the part of Judge Ginsburg's law clerks to ask me to participate in this roast. It is not so much that the court is busy this time of year, but that I do not have any law clerks who worked for Judge Ginsburg, so that I have had to engage in original composition, something I have not done for many years. Some things do not roast very well. Roast kangaroo, for example. I doubt whether Ruth Ginsburg roasts very well. She's much too serious a person. It's rather like roasting Queen Victoria or Erin Griswold. So I'll say only a few things. First of all, it's surprising that Ruth has come so far as she has. Everyone knows she interviews very badly. Queen Victoria probably did as well. Too serious, for Pete's sake. Now, those of us who know Ruth well understand that this is really not true. It is not the case that she has no sense of humor. No one who married Marty could be lacking in a sense of humor. Maybe that did not come out as I intended. It is just that Ruth is a very orderly person. All you have to do is walk into her immaculate office to realize that. That's also why in her academic days she specialized in civil procedure, a field characterized by utterly pointless order. So being an orderly person, Ruth tries to schedule her levity as she schedules everything else. That explains why it is sometimes as hard to get her to stop laughing as it is to get her to start. Marty has told me, I hope I'm not breaching any confidence here, that on alternate Tuesdays, Ruth goes into the living room after dinner and just sits there giggling until bedtime. Alternate Wednesday mornings, you have perhaps learned, are a very bad time to go in and see her. Ruth and I were drawn together, of course, by our similar philosophical proclivities. She was an ardent feminist and a public interest litigator, and I, in the days when I had policy views, opposed affirmative action and thought that standing to litigate should be constricted as narrowly as possible. We have formed a very close friendship, and one of us must be mistaken, or perhaps both. Ruth and I were also drawn together, I suppose, by the fact that we are both kibitzers. We like to kibitz, and we don't mind being kibitzed. I often tell the story about my early days on the Court of Appeals when Ed Tam invited me up to his office for the first time to talk about some administrative matter, as I recall. Ed had been a district judge for many years, and district judges get used to writing opinions that no one else butts in on. They tend to retain the attitude that fosters even after they are demoted to the Court of Appeals. And Ed, as I learned that day, retained his attitude to a particularly high degree. He cupped his hand around my elbow, guided me over to the wall where his judicial commission hung, squinted up at it and said, I've read this thing 100 times. I can't find anything in it that authorizes me to be an editor. This was entirely unprovoked. I hadn't even had occasion to sit with Ed yet. Anyway, I took his message and pretty much abided by it as far as his opinions were concerned over the years. But to return to my point, Ruth was perhaps the only judge on the D.C. court who needed that advice as much as I did. She, the only one from whom I recall regularly receiving commitments for improvements rather than corrections. Not, this is wrong, Nino, but the point would be stronger if. And maybe I'm the only judge that appreciated receiving them. Ruth and I had developed something of a mutual improvement society, and I miss it. That's all I have to say by way of roasting, but I will conclude with a few earnest comments. I have missed Ruth very much since leaving the Court of Appeals. She was the best of colleagues, and she is the best of friends. I wish her 100 years.